Well, then I'll go ahead and welcome everyone to the City Council meeting this June the 23rd, 2020, and welcome those that are on our Zoom call. We'll go ahead and have Claudia call on to do a roll call.
Councillor Drapkin.
Present.
Councillor Garvin.
Here.
Councillor Geary.
Here.
Councillor Stassens.
You're muted, Wendy.
Sorry, I wasn't ready. I'm here.
Councillor Peralta.
Here.
Council President Minke.
Present.
And Mayor Hill.
Here. Thank you for the roll call. We'll move into our agenda this evening. The first that we have is a proclamation, and we're going to do a Parks and Recreation Month proclamation. And so I'm going to call on Park and Recreation Director Susan Muir to give us some introduction. Susan?
Thank you, Mayor. This is always a fun night for us in Parks and Rec. We're usually with you, and we usually have our team with us, and because of COVID, everything is a little different, including this summer's Parks and Rec Month. But we have good news tonight. Summer is not canceled. Before we go to the slideshow, I want to take a minute to appreciate the Parks and Rec staff. The last few months have been tough for everybody in our community, and we are no different. We've missed our community and our employees. And I wanted to share an email that came in from a McMinnville resident last Friday in response to Katie's weekly email that she sends out about Parks and Rec and what's happening. We always value feedback, and this one stood out to me, and I wanted to share it with you since it's Parks and Rec Month. The resident said, I wish I had been more vocal when receiving paper communications because I never told you how much I admire you and appreciate you. I want you to know you have been positively impactful long before now. I've lived in McMinnville my whole life, and you have consistently made this an enjoyable and accessible place to live. I haven't taken part in nearly enough Parks and Rec events in recent years, but I enjoy every one of them. Your staff is energetic and amazing. The Parks and Rec team makes our city glow. So the staff in Parks and Rec is amazing, and they've put together a lot of great things for our community. And for tonight, we have a really brief PowerPoint, Mayor, and then you can read the proclamation. And then Katie Noyd is online with us here tonight to give everyone an idea of how to have fun this summer.
Let's roll the presentation then. Thank you, Susan. I know we were all looking for some music so that we could kind of rock out to that because it is a lot of fun. We all know that, and your group brings so much of that spirit with them as we deal, whether it be at the Aquatic Center, or the Community Center out in Parks and Rec, our summer sports programs, which are, you know, a lot of things a lot different. But nevertheless, I'm going to read a proclamation designating the designation of July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas McMinnville's parks and recreation programs enhance and improve the social, economic, and environmental fabric of our community. And whereas our parks and recreation programs are important to making McMinnville a super cool place to live. And whereas park and recreation programs make people want to live here. And whereas park and recreation areas help the environment and give us fresh air to breathe. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas make for fun places for kids and adults to go outside and play. And whereas the city of McMinnville recognizes the benefits of awesome parks and recreation resources, therefore I, Scott A. Hill, Mayor of McMinnville, do hereby extend the spirit of fun to the residents of McMinnville in recognizing the month of July as National Park and Recreation Month. In witness thereof, I have herefore set my hand this, the 23rd day of June in the year 2020. Signed, Scott A. Hill, Mayor of McMinnville. It's a pleasure to be able to read that proclamation. Katie, let's turn it over to you and recognize you as our community center manager and right in the hub of everything that's going on. So Katie, we welcome you.
Thank you, Mayor Hill. So if you're asking yourself, how do we have fun this summer? I'll give you some details. All parks, playgrounds, skate parks, ball fields, and trails are open, but some amenities are closed at this time. There is a list on our website detailing this information. We've been doing Mac to You, which is daily online activities and videos that celebrate each day of the week, including Selfless Sunday, Tasty Tuesday, Friday Fun Day, and more. Right now, we have Zoom gymnastics classes, and then coming soon, Stars Day Camp starts this coming Monday, June 29th, and we'll have more Zoom classes like dance, cheer, and more while we're still dealing with physical distancing. So for Parks and Rec Month, hopefully you saw our Summer Isn't Canceled logo. This weekend we'll be getting a Summer Isn't Canceled postcard telling our citizens that. For Parks and Recreation Month, we are encouraging citizens to play, explore, and complete weekly challenges through an app that will send them on scavenger hunts to take pictures, perform tasks, or go to certain locations like our parks. Families can do these activities whenever they want, and we also have some in-person activities such as chalk art day, bike rides from park to park, and outdoor game night. Each week from June 28th through August 1st, we will have a theme including nature, art, play, community, and fitness. We will give out prizes throughout the month. We encourage everyone to go to our website and then go to the Mac to You page for more details later this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And then Susan, if you would just let staff know how much council we surely appreciate all that the Parks and Rec group does and their upbeat attitude as we're going through some troubling times. I'll tell you, it's amazing how resilient though our community is. We had our executive session, and as we're going into this session, I'm sitting and looking out my side window across the street, and there's a mom and dad with their 2.5-year-old playing out on the lawn. They had squirt guns and just having a good old time. So we still find ways to enjoy the summer, even with some of the physical distancing that we put between us. But again, share with your staff how much we truly appreciate all that they're doing during these tough times.
Will do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well, that takes us to our next area, and that is comments from citizens. And so this is the opportunity for citizens to provide comment, and we can speak on any topic other than a matter that's in litigation, quasi-judicial land use matter, or a matter scheduled for public hearing at some future date. We're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes, and I have a little timer, and you'll hear that go off. If you wish to speak in Zoom, push the hands up and Claudia will recognize you. Please state your name and address for the record in order to encourage an environment of openness, courtesy, and respect for differing opinions and views. Please refrain from behavior that is disruptive to our meetings, making noises, and we're not together in a large group, so the shouting and all those types of things, but just make sure that we have an orderly process to this opportunity. So if there would be anyone that would like to make public comment, please hit the raise your hand function in Zoom and Claudia will recognize you.
We'll start with Margaret Cross.
Okay, Margaret. Welcome, Margaret.
Oh, new technology. Hi, I'm Margaret Cross. I live in McMinnville at 1102 Southwest Russ Lane. And I want to say real quickly, I really appreciate your honoring the Parks and Rec people, you know, along with the library and other cool things that this city does. They epitomize the heart and soul of this community. And they represent what a community should be, where you serve the citizens, you look for their well-being, their health, and their intellectual development, and it's all good. So nice for you. I'm here tonight because on the other side of the coin, as opposed to the good stuff we've just been talking about that the community can do, once again, Riverbend is coming back to haunt us. Everybody kind of thought that went away, but it hasn't. It's gone through multiple iterations at the courts. The courts have consistently found against the Riverbend application that will go before the Board of County Commissioners. But there is a remand hearing from LUBA scheduled on July 9th. This is a very short period of turnaround. And it will be held on a very narrow issue on new evidence. We don't know what that is because they won't tell us yet. But I am here to ask you as a council to once again do what you have done in the past, which is to write a letter to the Board of County Commissioners stating McMinnville's position that Riverbend should be closed, that it is not an asset to McMinnville, that it's not wanted, we don't need it, there are other alternatives, and urge them to put an end to this long and difficult chapter, which I have to tell you induces in me great despair that it will ever end, because it's like they have, waste management has big bucks that go on forever, and this is just a community trying to keep our community a healthy, safe, good community. And this is citizens fighting this. It's one of the world's great, giant, global corporations. So that's what I'm here for. I sent all of you a letter that laid it out in greater detail, a copy of the remand notice, copies of prior letters that you've sent. But I'm here as a member of the board of Stop the Dump Coalition, really just pleading with you to stay with us and try to put an end to this eyesore and blight in our community. So I can be reached, I put my phone number and all that. If you need to reach me or any of our other board members, I can put you in touch. But this approach or this support would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Even though it's an evidentiary hearing on a very narrow issue, I think the commissioners should hear from you. So that's what I'm here for. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can find out how to stop all of this. Okay, any other comments from the group, Claudia?
We have Dean Clough.
Welcome, Dean.
Well, thank you.
Good to see you.
Nice to be here. I live at 450 Northwest 7th Street here in McMinnville. I'm here to talk about the police budget in McMinnville and in support of the police budget as it has existed in the past. I don't know much about the police in other cities. I don't know much about the politics and the conditions in other cities. But I had a good experience in McMinnville through the time that the homeless folks were on Dustin's Court. Some of you might have remembered that. They were there a long time. Thank you for the improvements that have been made, most certainly. When I was there, I often tried to interact with some of the homeless people, and quite often they'd be a very hungry person down on their luck. But occasionally they'd be a very violent person that had troubles with authority. And when you first came in contact with them, you really didn't know what they were going to be. They could look one way and suddenly turn a different way very quickly. I think a social worker would have a very easy time dealing with the first group, but a very difficult time dealing with the second group. One particular instance comes to my mind. A fellow had pitched a tent outside of Dustin's Court under a tree, but close to the office that we maintained. And I went up to it on 2 occasions and was trying to get their attention, and nothing came out of that other than a couple of grunts. So I called 911 and asked an officer if they would come and ask this person to move. And as the officer comes up, I realize he has no idea who is in that tent. It might be a very hungry lady that's just having a bad night's sleep, or it might be a person with 3 Dobermans in the tent and a weapon and on methamphetamines when they come out. And you realize how ill-prepared a social worker would be to make that kind of contact. I'm sure on the second occasion that they got a call for social interaction, they'd say, I'm not going out there without a gun and some good training. They needed the protection to deal with that situation. I look at McMinnville, and I'm very proud of the officers involved, the leadership that's involved, and how they reflect the community that we live in. I wouldn't want the votes to be cast in a reflection of the high energy, emotional scenes that we see on television, far removed from the situation we have here in McMinnville. And again, I'm here just simply to appreciate the support I got in my situation and what I see in McMinnville as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Next, we have Chris Anderson.
Welcome, Chris.
Hello, Chris Anderson, 1880 Southwest Fellows. Good evening, just have a written thing. It's been quite a couple of weeks since the last budget meeting. I even spoke then. The nation and the world has come together in the majority to support not just BLM and Black Lives Matter, but also to seek for police reform, restructuring, reorganization. This movement is not the squirrel caught looking at shiny objects, as stated by Councilmember Menke. It is in fact a lasting, growing effort continually today to fix reform and policing policies. It is not about defunding, as we discussed last time. Even as we speak tonight, cities big and small are changing policies in this nation, from no-knock orders to completely disbanding and restructuring departments, from Minnesota to Camden, New Jersey. Police reform and budgets have, in a matter of weeks, changed the way police handle and act in the communities. So it is not a, no, we can't change this late situation, as Councilmember Stassen said last week. The only limits that we have to our ability to commit to making these changes and going forward are within you, our legislation, and your ability to implement the budget, make changes, and direct how those funds are spent with not only just the police department, but also with our planning department and moving forward with our MAC 150 initiative. I ask that the council look again at the funding and the structuring of the funding, specifically in the police budget this evening, so that way we may divert monies to training, education, and reform for social work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next.
Mayor, that was our last public comment.
Okay. Thank you for those that gave us public comment. That now takes us to a presentation, and we're going to have the McMinnville Annual Historic Preservation Award, and so I'll call on Planning the planning department, Chuck Darnell, to describe the projects, and Chuck has a presentation of the projects in a PowerPoint presentation. And I don't know if Heather, you're going to be a part of this also, but Chuck and Heather. Chuck?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it'll just be me tonight, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can share the presentation. So tonight we're presenting our Historic Preservation Awards, and just for a little bit of background, these are awards that we've attempted to give out annually and as a way to acknowledge and honor property owners and businesses in McMinnville that have done great historic preservation work. We've solicited for nominations for projects to receive rewards and received some nominations, and those were reviewed and selected by the Historic Landmarks Committee this year. And there was 2 projects that were selected. The first project that was selected is the Jameson Hardware or Taylordale building, as it's more recently known. This building is located at 608 Northeast 3rd Street. The owners are Historic 3rd and Ford, and I believe they're on the line tonight to receive the award. This project was considered a rehabilitation of that building. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it, but it included both exterior and interior massive rehabilitation and renovation. The architect was Ernie Munch, who worked with a lot of us city staff on the project along the way. And many of you may have met as he provided us with some tours of the building as they were going through the construction process. These are just some photos of some of the work that was completed along the way. Like I said, Ernie was nice enough to invite us along and kind of see progress as it occurred in the building. And it really was a massive renovation. It included, tearing out, existing finishes and things, but also just a massive structural upgrade to the building. It included a full seismic upgrade to current earthquake and seismic codes, the installation of an elevator so that all 3 floors are accessible. And some of these photos here just show kind of some of the work. The ones on the left-hand side are the ground floor. You can see like the floor joists and the old beams exposed. And the photos on the right are from the basement, where there was a lot of work done that might not be as readily seen by the public once the building's open, but they did a lot of work with water drainage issues that were occurring down there and causing problems with the structure, and all those things have been resolved with the work that they've done. These are some other photos of the kind of the upper story, which is being renovated for lodging uses. You can just kind of see on the left some of the work going into preserving the windows, which were some of them found to be very heavily deteriorated from water damage and how they were installed. So those were removed and replaced with custom designed and built windows to exactly match the historic windows. And then the photos on the right are closer to finished product, but this is the entryway going up to the lodging uses and one of the rooms that will be available for rent. This is the exterior of the building. The photo on the top left is the existing condition before the work started. So this photo is probably from about 2 years ago. And the photo on the bottom right is the building today as it exists. So you can see they really preserved all the historic character of the building. One of the big things they did was and focused on was preserving the brick on the building. Some of it was in somewhat rough shape just from weathering and time. And so you can see that they really cleaned up the brick and repointed it, and also did a complete reworking and update of the storefront windows, but did so in a way that completely matched the old historic character of the building. This is just the Ford Street side of the structure, just showing kind of that same pattern of preserving the old historic features of that building that have existed there for about 100 years. I think the building was constructed in 1904. And so something that Ernie Munch has shared with me along the way and what their overall goals were, where they wanted to make sure the building was going to be there for another 100 years. So that was something that he communicated a lot throughout the project. So this is the kind of just a photo of that building as it existed in I think this photo's from about 1911 and the building today. So just a comparison of the work that was done. And so we have our award and our plaque that we will present to the recipients. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to present that to the recipients who are on the line here tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to formally present the McMinnville Annual Historic Preservation Award to Taylor Dale. And so if we have the representatives, Ernie's there, and others that would accept that, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Jackson. This is my husband, Sean. We're owners of the building. First of all, we just want to say thank you so much for this honor. This is something that we're really proud of, and we love the city of McMinnville, and we love history. And when we purchased this building, we really thought it was important to preserve all of the beautiful historical features of it, and as Chuck said, to really make sure that it would last for another 100 years. So we just are very appreciative of you, the mayor, the city, and all of the staff at the city who have helped us in this project. It's really been a big undertaking. Thank you, Chuck, and thank you, Heather Richards and Jamie Fleckenstein, and I'm sure there are many others that I'm missing right now, but we've really appreciated your support and your help on this, and we're looking forward to seeing this building through to the next 100 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean, because there's a big team working on this, and we want to say thank you to everybody who was working on this project on our end.
Yeah, so I'd like to recognize the individuals that have contributed to the success of the restoration. These people really deserve the award and the honor. Seth Calais, Gina Harley, Jay Augustus, Christiane Kramer, Ron Meissner with Grant Company, and architect Ernie Munch, and Zane Johnson with Map. Ernie is the true historian here. He did so much research. You know, it's not just the building that he researched, but also the people from McMinnville. And so if any of you have a chance to read the historic report that Ernie put together, it's quite a story, and it's definitely an entertaining read. So thank you, Ernie, and thank you everybody from the city for this honor.
Again, thank you. I'll tell you, there is quite a history of that building, but I'll tell you what you've done with it for lodging, food, and wine is going to take it into the next 100 years. And I've had a chance to go through the building. I've had an opportunity to listen to the historic presentation that Ernie made to the Historic Preservation Committee, and it just is phenomenal. And it truly is idealistic of the things that happen in McMinnville. And so for you to come in and love our city enough to put the money and the resources to do this is phenomenal. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ernie, I think, wanted to say a few words too.
Okay, just to go ahead, Ernie.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I again wanted to thank Sean and Katie for being such wonderful clients. What they've done there is really flows from their commitment to the building and to McMinnville, and to the vision that they have for both the building and the city. And I should say that McMinnville seems to be a very successful town. When you look around at the other town sites, McMinnville has come above them and been successful, and I think we stand on the shoulders of you people who have continually provided some vision for the city and chosen to build your community around this historic resource. You have a social and political structure which is evident in your downtown and in the meeting tonight. We love working with the group of people that Sean mentioned, who are really good at what they do. The project manager, Seth Gillay for the Jackson family, he has a caring, nurturing hand, and it really gets the best out of people. The grant company with Mike Grant and Jay Augustus and Ron Meisner, the project superintendent, is the kind of guy you want for this kind of project. He's a thorough, calm, steady hand. He's smart, hardworking, and it's just a pleasure to have them on. There's some craftspeople, Hank, who built the storefront, Joe, who did all the electrical work. A friend of mine, Donovan Harding of Monitor Millworks, built the windows and doors, replicas of what was there, and did it on machinery that is of the period of the building. And if you have a chance to see a shop, you should see it. It's a working museum. In our office, Erica Everett was the project manager for this project up until we started construction. And she did a wonderful job of bringing the ideas that people had together in a good set of drawings and good product. And then we were lucky enough when she left for Colorado Springs to have Zane Johnson come in, who's been really wonderful with the construction. And I think there are two people that really are city employees, which deserve special recognition. There's, and I think you should be really proud of them for the job they've done. Chuck Darnell, senior planner and staff to the Historic Landmarks Committee, has always done a good job for us, and I think the committee in the meetings and giving us the information we needed to make the applications. We've disagreed at a time, but he's never been disagreeable. He asks good questions, which kind of nudge us in a better direction, and that makes for a better project. The other person is your building official, Stuart Ramsing, who is technically very good on the code, has a comprehensive outlook, is concerned about, understands what you're trying to do, and is forward-looking. And in short, I've been in business for 46 years, I guess, as an architect, and he's the best building official with whom I've ever worked, and bar none. So for those two individuals, we wanted to give back to them something. And in this period of digital and virtual meetings and visits, we wanted to give them something tangible. And so, I don't know, Chuck, can you get the slides up? Will that work or not? Anyway, I'll go on. When we got permission to tear down the building, we took down the ceiling and we discovered this beam that was 24 feet long and was hiding up in the rafters. And we didn't know it was there. And Chuck is trying to get a picture up, but it was a big, heavy beam. It weighed 1.25 tons, you know, just hanging up there in the rafters. There you are. And we knew we had one of these in the back. We've seen it, but we didn't know we had this one, so it was a pleasant surprise. I took some photos and then went back and looked at them, and there's some initials in the middle there, J plus S. And if you look to the left, there's a little heart. And well, who could J plus S be? It could have been John and Sandy, the bead shop owners. We called them. No, they hadn't tagged the beam. So we finally figured out by process of elimination that it was James and Sarah Fletcher, the couple who built the original building. And essentially, this is a Valentine to each other. Here's Sarah Fletcher. And we have a picture of James too, but I don't have it here. But one has surfaced. Her granddaughter is living at the coast now and is probably listening in now. So what we did was we took the beam out and took it over to solid form, and they cleaned it up, got all the grease off of it, and kept the patina. And we replicated the inscriptions, the heart and the letters and whatnot. And what's the next slide? Yesterday and today it was put up in place. So it will be back in the building, the new building, and it will face inward. So when you walk into the space and you look backward, you can see this Valentine, which has got to be the largest Valentine in McMinnville, and probably the oldest. I don't know for that for sure. And then it was 24 feet long when we found it. We had to cut off 2 feet, and then we had some little pieces made out of the 2 feet that were left over. And next slide, I think, is the last one. We wanted to give some of these pieces. Do we have one more slide?
Yeah, I think it's up now. No,
there should be one more, but if you put my visual back on, That'll do it. My camera. Anyway, we took a piece of that, and I'll hold it up here. We thought they would do well as paperweights, and they have a rivet through it and whatnot, and we want to give one each to Chuck and to Stuart once we have it engraved. I thought it would make a great paperwork weight, but it weighs 8 pounds. You could use it for free weights, lift them up and down and work out. And we have a smaller piece, more manageable for each of the members of the committee. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the time that you and the committee give to preserving this resource, and how much of a pleasure it was to work with the client, with the city, and bring this project into fruition. Thank you.
Ernie, as always, you have a great story to tell, and we appreciate that. I'll tell you, I saw the beam going up downtown, so I've seen that, and I'm very appreciative of that. So again, thank you, Sean and Kate and Ernie, for being with us this evening, and it's recognition well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good. Thank you. We have another award this evening.
One more thing. The loop. It's Sean and Katie's anniversary.
Thanks, Sammy.
Congrats.
Okay, Chuck, do we have another presentation tonight?
Yeah, we do. We have one more. All right, so the next award was selected for the Primisys building. And this building's on Baker Street, just north of 3rd Street, but still in our downtown historic district that's on the National Register. The owners are Larry and Christine Cummings, and their architect was Linda Cameron, who we worked closely with on this project as well. This one was a complete reconstruction of the building facade after it was damaged. The photo on the top left shows the building as it existed, about a couple of years ago. And after, unfortunately, a vehicle drove through the front of the building, it damaged the brick facade in such a way that it had to be torn down just for structural reasons. And so they were left with this kind of shell of a building facade. And so they were going through the reconstruction process and trying to decide whether they would replace what was there before or what they were going to do. And we came across this historic photo of the building on the left here, and the right side of the screen zooms in on it. And this is what the building looked like before. And so there had been some, somewhat significant alterations over time, just as uses changed through the building. But the building owners, Larry and Christine, decided to, instead of reconstructing what was there, which wasn't really consistent with the old historic character of the building, they decided to attempt to redesign the building and what it might have been when it was originally constructed. And so this is the building as it was redesigned and constructed. And we actually, after the fact, found a better photo of the building, which is in the top left here. But they did a great job. Their architect designed the building and to the best of her abilities to match the historic character of the original building that was there. You'll see that they did keep the roll-up door, which they had on the one side because that was part of their business operations at this point, but they designed it to look somewhat similar to the storefront window pattern that was on the building previously. So they were our second award that we were presenting this evening. Larry was going to be calling in this evening, but he called me just a couple hours ago and said something came up and he wasn't able to be here. So I'll be presenting the award and the plaque to him tomorrow. I'll bring it by the business there, and he did say he was very appreciative and just happy to contribute to our downtown area and the historic charm down there. And so he was appreciative of being acknowledged for the work that they did.
Well, thank you, Chuck, for that presentation, and then we'll allow you to formally present the award to Larry and Christine and tell them how much we appreciate the work that's gone into looking back at the historic nature and bringing that building to life. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's now move on to another presentation, and we have Visit McMinnville's contract and annual work plan. And so I'll call on City Manager Jeff Towery to lead us through that discussion. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Refer you to the staff report in your packet, prepared primarily by interim city attorney Walt Gow. He identifies the key sections in the contract that are changed. I did a report on this in more summary form at a previous council meeting just to connect the council with the progress. I'll just briefly, for the public in attendance, go over the primary changes. We're looking at the possibility of changing in response to any legislative changes that may come up as a result of action that could change the use of TLT funds and give Visit McMinnville the opportunity to engage in that new system, whatever it may be. The term of the contract is a 5-year term with the opportunity for renewal. It better fits the Visit McMinnville's ability to do long-range planning on a multiple-year basis. We acknowledge that at some point there will need to be a community conversation about future uses of future uses of transient lodging tax, perhaps above and beyond marketing and promotion. But given the current economic reality, it's not clear when that will happen, and the agreement commits the two partners to move that forward when the time is right. It will be at a time when collections are probably more like a previous year than like the next couple of years are planning to be. We are encouraging Visit McMinnville to build a more consistent reserve, and we have identified the opportunity for Visit McMinnville to continue to present annual work plans and budgets to the council for review and approval. Our recommendation is that you approve the resolution tonight and then hear a report from Visit McMinnville about the proposed work plan for the following year, at which point, if the council is satisfied with that work plan, we would ask the council to approve that work plan by motion. Either Walt or I can answer any questions that you may have on the contract specifically.
Thank you, Jeff. And so I'll open it up for questions for Jeff or for Walt.
I did have one.
Okay, Zach.
Walt. Can I guess more definition on number one item in your packet, or our packet, the definitions in section 1 of the agreement tied to any amended changes to the legislative. So, right, that's if the legislation changes something governing the rules of our agreement, that's automatically incorporated into this agreement. Is that what that's saying?
That's correct. And basically, the existing Visit McMinnville contract incorporates those legislative definitions. Right. So all we wanted to do was to tie them to any changes that might take place, so that the contract wouldn't be in conflict with the enabling legislation.
Right. We'll play by the state's rules, and if the state changes the rules, we'll play by those rules now too.
Exactly.
What about something to the effect of something more open to city policy direction, to say, like, for example, if they change the percentage, you can change it up to this much. That would allow us the opportunity to change that percentage, which is a whole discussion we have to have, and then implement it in. What's the procedure for something a little bit more nuanced than a strict rule? Does that question make sense?
Sure. There's really two changes to the contract that bear on your question. The first one is in section 3E of the agreement, in section 3C of the agreement, previously the TLT revenues were locked in at 70%, whereas in the new contract, they're locked in at 70% for 3 years. Thereafter, it can be anywhere between 50 and 70% if the city has undertaken an initiative to implement any newly authorized legislative changes that would allow TLT dollars to be used for something different. In that circumstance, section 3F is a new section of the agreement's been added to provide that the city would provide notice to Visit McMinnville of any desire for the council to use a portion of that percentage for something that's other than what has been approved in prior business plans, and provide Visit McMinnville with the opportunity to make a proposal if they chose in order to implement that initiative that the city council might want to undertake. That they would not be required to do so, but they would essentially get a first shot at it. If it fell within their wheelhouse, that might well result in an amendment to the business plan. Otherwise, the council may find other ways to spend up to 20% of the TLT dollars.
Are there time limits associated with that? I'm not seeing any, and I'm just reading your updated numbers. So you say we have to provide notice, and then they get a rebut. Are there time constraints?
I think we have to provide 6 months notice in the agreement of the intention to use TLT dollars for something other than what they've been using it for.
So this would fall under that previous.
Yes, it's designed to allow the planning for the next business plan to incorporate that if that's within something that Visit McMinnville wants to undertake in terms of expanding their scope.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Walt, just really quickly, remind me again, I think you mentioned it earlier, what's the total time period in the contract?
It's a 5-year contract. It has two-year automatic renewals unless either party gives 6 months prior notice. So that would be prior to December 31st of the year in which a term is ending. So it's
9 years.
It's 5 years plus the possibility of two-year extensions.
Okay, so maximum per term of 5 years, and then for the first 3 years, we're kind of locked in at the existing 70%.
That's correct.
And then after that, it could switch. Well, I appreciate the extra flexibility in future years, and I wouldn't anticipate a need for a lot of flexibility given the challenges that industry sector is going to have for the next couple of years. So I appreciate your work on it, Walt, and I appreciate the flexibility from Visit McMinnville.
Well, I want to say that this revised contract was the result of a lot of discussion between the two Jeffs and their council liaison and boards, with a little assist from myself and Attorney Joe Strunk, who I appreciate his professionalism.
I appreciate the credit to everybody else. Thanks to everybody who participated.
Thank you, Sal. Any other questions for Walt or Jeff? Not seeing any, then I think I'll turn it over to Jeff Knapp to go over a revised kind of annual plan, so to speak. Jeff?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. It is exciting to be here, looking back at 5 years and hopefully looking forward at the next 5 with a 5-year contract. I wanted to first start by saying that it's been a very successful 5 years in our opinion, and it's really due to the thought, the hard work, and the support that City Council and our board in particular have put blood, sweat, and tears into the foundation of this organization. And I have some exciting things to share with you this evening as far as the last 5 years before we're looking forward. But thank you for Councilor Minke, thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Towery, for being at all of our board members and our board meetings and helping steer us in a positive direction. And thank you during these last 5 years for moving forward with an economic development plan that kind of can steer all of our work and we can connect our efforts to make it a lot easier. So I'm going to kick off the presentation today. We have, as an organization, invested this year in some data from Dean Runyon. And Dean Runyon in our industry is the benchmark for economic impact studies. So we've had the historic economic impact studies for the county, for the region, for the state, but we're really interested in sort of baselining and seeing our progress, how we compare to others and what we've done over the last 5 years. So I want to quickly take you through that and then talk about where we're heading from there. So we are an economic development organization. You task us with bringing improved, helping improve the quality of life as well as the economy here in McMinnville. These are some standouts that we got from our study. Consecutively, year after year since 2015, visitor spending has increased. Visitation, travel spending, employment, and tax revenues, and I'll share that specific data as we move forward. This past year, we had over 257,000 overnight person trips to the city of McMinnville. Travel spending is nearing $40 million in 2019, which is a significant uptake. We'll talk about that. And just an interesting note that leisure and hospitality is currently the 4th largest employment sector in our county. So, you know, we are constantly looking for new ways to measure success and benchmark, and things are changing all the time. And I know that people sometimes say, well, you know, if you didn't have a destination marketing organization, you know, tourists are still going to come, and the money's still going to be, you know, I have heard arguments that if we weren't doing what we do, we would continue to still see growth. This is a really powerful slide, in my opinion. This shows visitor spending from 2015 to 2019 in millions. And you can see since 2015, when we started, visitor spending is up nearly 80% in McMinnville. And when you look across the average of the Willamette Valley, Oregon, and Yamhill County, those average are about 16%. So we are doing 64% better than, you know, the region, the state, and our county in general. So it shows that the money that you're putting into our efforts and the hard work that we're doing is having a very large effect. This breaks down what visitors are spending here and how each of those industries are growing. When we look at visitor economy, we look at accommodations, food service, retail, food stores, transportation, gas, and then arts, entertainment, and recreation. You can see, you know, 2015 is when we started as an organization building content. 2016 is when we really launched all of our programming, and you can see the immediate reaction to that. You see as we move into 2017, and then of course the Atticus Hotel comes online, and you can see us really make a big jump here in accommodations. At the same time, you can see how that's directly tied to food. You know, the more people coming here, we are a food and beverage destination. And don't let these numbers down here fool you. You can see those are all really good increases over 5 years. Nothing's under 20%, which is really remarkable. This is just breaking down what's going on for employment in the county. This calls out leisure and hospitality, which breaks down this way: food and drink, the majority, accommodations, and arts and entertainment and recreation bringing up these are the opportunity areas for growth. So earnings, you know, this creates jobs and employs people, and we can see the earnings from 2015 when we started. I came on in October of 2015. Our efforts have increased over 102% in accommodations and food service, and again, large increases relative to where they were starting, but in all areas. So we're employing more people, and they're earning more dollars. And this is the bottom line for our work and for the city. The tax revenue that we've generated has increased at 180%. So I know we did in 2015 increase the tax rate, but you could also see through the visitor spending that we are putting those dollars to use. So as far as an investment goes, we feel that investment in our work don't know very many things that would produce that type of return. So 180% increase in our budget and the dollars that are being collected by the city for the general fund. So we feel very good about that. So as we're looking into 2019, everything has dropped off, and we are looking really more at a 2016 type budget. We know when we going into this planning and budgeting that our plan has to be ultra flexible. We are fingers on the pulse of what's happening weekly and monthly with lodging, and we are basically going to be reviewing and readjusting our plan monthly and then for quarterly reviews. So we know there's going to be a serious decrease in revenue. Like I said, we're anticipating at least a 50% decrease over our budget from this last fiscal year. And
I do.
I'm sorry, hello? Okay.
Claudia, can you make sure the lines are all muted except for those presenting?
Sorry, and I can't see people, so if there are questions, please do speak up. There'll be an opportunity for me to pause and ask, but in my presenting mode, I can't see people very much. So was there a question, or was that just a...
Let's go ahead, Jeff, and finish, and then we'll ask for feedback.
Thank you. So, you know, you would think that with less people visiting right now and the situation that we're in, there may be less things to do. This actually creates more work. So we're navigating something we haven't navigated before. It's a whole new type of conversation. We have to utilize different skills. We have pulled back on people that we work with and taken a lot of work in-house with our employees doing that. So we've got a road ahead of us. And critical for this year's planning, we are losing marketing dollars and support from key partners such as the Willamette Valley Visitors Association, Travel Oregon, the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, organizations that we've worked in the last 5 years to create really good relationships with and align their marketing dollars to amplify our efforts. All of those organizations have taken a hit and will have less resources, unfortunately. So when we look at our estimated income and what we're forecasting, we are looking at a very, we're using a crystal ball and data, which is a funny thing to think about using those two methods, but we're doing our best that we can with the information that we've got. We are expecting, like I said, about a 50% decrease. Our August check, we've anticipated $0 in April and May, which we know we do have people coming, so we feel like this is a very conservative estimate. And we still are anticipating a few, about $30,000 to $40,000 from people that have not paid yet from Q1. November, we're anticipating a 60% decrease, or budgeting as such, 50% for our February. And then this is pretty optimistic, I think, for budgeting flat with 2019 for May, but we will be revisiting as we go, and we will be able to turn things off and on as we need to. This is how our proposed budget plays out. 63% of our resources will be applied to marketing, 17% to destination development efforts, and then 20% of our budget to administration and keeping the lights on. We will average $16,000 per month in this budget for discretionary marketing expenses. So there's a lot of discretionary spending that we can turn off, and we are not in any long-term committed contracts of any significance. So we can be lean and mean and make adjustments as needed. Our plan, we're used to coming to you with very detailed, this is what we're going to do in all of these buckets. And this year we're having to take a much broader approach and make decisions as we go along for what will be most impactful and most appropriate. So in terms of economic development, our main goal is to assist local businesses with getting as many visitors when appropriate back here safely and in a timely manner to positively impact the economic recovery. We are committed to seeking out data and utilizing that and sharing that with our partners in the community to support sound decision making. We've been partnering and then continue to partner strongly with all of the organizations that we have in the city in the economic development sphere. Yamhill County, we're working very diligently with the Yamhill County Tourism Partnership and some exciting projects, and then up the chain. Destination development, which was, we were really going to be expanding this year with our prior to March plans. And we are going to be taking on some business recruitment efforts, which is a unique thing for us. We've done a little bit of it. I have done a little bit of it, focusing my time and energy to target businesses to locate or relocate here in McMinnville that would serve the visitor economy. I think that we are, our particular destination hangs its hats on food and beverage, and those industries are very fragile. And you may have heard we've lost Valley Commissary recently as a local business, and that's a big hit to our community. It's a big a visitor asset, and those are the types of things that we want to try to help not happen. And if those types of things do, that we could potentially help those businesses find another location, or maybe entice other folks to decide to move here and benefit from the work that we do. And then we will continue to focus on outdoor recreation, agritourism, and arts and culture. Cycling is a big thing that is taking off right now, especially during COVID, and we will be putting time and energy into supporting that particular endeavor, as well as the others listed here. And then marketing, our promotions, we are going to be relying, and we currently are relying heavily on PR. So for us, not being able to market outside of the county to tell visitors to come here currently, we are relying on written stories, news pieces, and things for other people to say that McMinnville is awesome, and that reasons why they might consider that in the future, or hopefully soon. And then we'll continue to maximize social media with our local focus both on external and local marketing, and then maintaining and improving our website to deliver engaging content that's relevant. So we are positioned to weather this and to be nimble and very successful. I'd also like to just call out, and as I'm wrapping up here with the plan, that we have an amazing staff, and the people that we employ, I'd like to shout out to Kitri McGuire, who's been my right hand for the last 5 years or so. She is, we have a very powerful team. And we brought on Jamie Korf a couple of months ago, who has really been critical in keeping connected to the local community, and we're looking to expand her niche skill set in keeping the community focused and connected to what we're doing. What's next? That's it, I guess. So at this point, I would take any questions about the budget and the plan. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. From the council, any questions of Jeff? I know we've got, I think we've got Kitri on the line. I saw a few board members also that are on the line too, but any questions for Jeff?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have so much of a question as a comment. Jeff, thank you so much for the presentation. I know that your that tourism has been one of the hardest hits in this pandemic, and that I feel like your business plan does a really good job of accepting or looking for the facts of the situation, and to really embrace those so that you can make good decisions, and also be optimistic that there's something that can be done to help move us in a great direction, even with the hardships that have been created. So thank you. The presentation was very well done, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Kelly?
I just want to compliment you again, Jeff, for the amazing business performance that you folks have shown over the last 4 or 5 years. It's just absolutely amazing in the marketing area. So thank you for your diligent and hard work. I know that you have served on many committees that you've had serious effect on just to make things work better for Visit McMinnville and for everybody else. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions or comments? Remy?
Thank you, and I appreciate the turn here just because my dog is becoming vocal as well. So Zach, thank you for letting me go first so I can mute myself so the dog doesn't continue to bark through our council meeting. I especially appreciated the slide related to how business in McMinnville has been affected versus Yamhill County. I know that this has been a very long effort and a very well vetted effort with a lot of input. When I say effort, I mean I'm talking about the initiation of the TLT dollars and then that transition into Visit McMinnville. And I think it's very clear how that has supported our community as a whole. We're all in such a vulnerable place with our budgets right now. It's such a challenge to know how to set out a budget when the future is so uncertain. And so I appreciate that your budget has flexibility, and I appreciate also the adjustments in your marketing efforts. I know that that's been a huge consideration of how do we promote McMinnville and support that economy here when we also need to realistically not be inviting people here and to protect the safe haven that we're all aware of. And so I especially appreciate hearing about those adjustments in your budget. To me, it's very clear that Visit McMinnville has done great work for the city, not only in regards to your task of promoting the city as a tourism destination, but also what has been contributed to the general fund and what that has allowed us to do. When I say you, I mean Visit McMinnville has provided a lot of dollars to the city that while now we have to roll those back, there was a great appreciation for having them, and I hope and trust that they will come back. So thank you, and thank you to the team at Visit McMinnville for what you've done, the work you've done and that you continue to do.
Thank you, Remy. Zach?
Thank you.
Thank you. This discussion is about kind of the next phase in the relationship with Visit McMinnville. So it's a good time to talk about lots of things. What's been rolling around in my head recently, I mean, you guys are in dire straits on forecasting your ability to have a future. So good luck with the challenges. Back in December, there was a handful of questions culminating about from the community about Visit McMinnville's, I guess, diversity in their marketing and what they're putting forth with Visit McMinnville's name and logo. And that was brought up by community leaders of all walks. And they had questions about you and your organization and kind of what your lens is and how you're thinking about equity and inclusion as you put out material. Have you had any of that ongoing discussions? Have you created any framework? Have you created a lens in which you're going to view the next steps that you do as you've looked forward and forecasted the future of Visit McMinnville? I think it's important to consider not only your financial health, but make sure that as you go champion McMinnville to the masses, that you're thinking about those things and really representing what we are. So can you respond to some of those questions that were brought up?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's really important to bring up. And I think there were things in December that were brought up. And I think that, quite honestly, we have been working with a lens of diversity and equity and inclusion. And we do so when we think about creating content and marketing materials, and we have many examples of that. If you look at our last video, we're not just showing white people. We have a diverse community, and we try to make sure that we are covering that. Of course, we can always do a better job, and we're committed to doing so, and assessing ourselves and our effectiveness in opening that dialogue and continuing to have that. I would encourage you to, I don't know how to respond without sending you the images that we use and the videos as far as the supporting documents. I'd happy to show you those things, but I can tell you that it is a priority for us. There is, again, a fine line of tokenizing, and we don't want to dabble in that. We don't want a picture with a white person, an Asian person, a black person, and, an outwardly homosexual person to check a box. So it is something that we do, and we will continue to do. And if we could do a better job, we hope that you will let us know.
So have you created any metrics or measures, or put in anything in something as simple as bylaws or guiding documents of what you're going to do? We're going to create this, we're going to look for this, or is it just sort of we're going to try and do our best?
We are. I don't know if it's in our bylaws or documents. If maybe there's an opportunity to put something in there, should there be, I can tell you that we operate that way. The board knows that we operate that way. And if there's something official that we can do to make that more transparent, we have public meetings, you can come and join us, you can look at our content. If you have a suggestion of something that we could do, we'd be open to hear about it.
I have no specific suggestions. That was in my head as something that had come up and hadn't really heard resolution or seen anything in this sort of, let's have another 2+2 year commitment. And so just wanted to see where that discussion was at from you, the director. So.
We are committed to being the best we can and to representing the community in the most honest way possible.
Wendy?
Yeah, I just had one thought actually triggered by Zach's questions. One thing that would be interesting is to research what kind of marketing reaches different groups in different ways. So like in addition to representing different images in the marketing that we do, you do a great job of collecting data. If there's any data, and I don't know if there is or not, but if there's any data out there about how you reach, because I know that, different groups might be reached in different ways, right? So what are the most effective ways to reach that diversity of groups to bring different people here? That might be something interesting, but I don't know if that data is out there, but that's one thought that I had in response to Zach's question. You guys are great at collecting data to create your marketing strategy. So that might be something to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment, Jeff. I think that the downtown businesses, the restaurants, the hotels are in pretty good hands with you leading the marketing effort for them. So I appreciate your commitment to them and your commitment to the city. Apropos of the comments about diversity and inclusion, I have a lot of confidence in your personal values in those areas. One suggestion that I would have is that you might consider, in future years, 2021, maybe some kind of an event that would highlight the area's cultural diversity, and that might be an appropriate type of format for the kinds of marketing and community building that I think some of the other members of the council are suggesting. So I just throw that out as a suggestion, and I thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Any other comments?
I could just add one comment. One thing that we've been talking about internally is DEI training for council. it works already with in terms of our strategic plan, and I believe it's something that's underway. And I feel like your commission or your board already does a very good job at addressing those issues. But I guess just as a kind of a pluff of Zach's comments, I'm wondering if you've also talked about doing DEI training within your board. And I'm also wondering if you were made, if there was free DEI training made available to Oregon wineries through the Oregon Wine Board in conjunction with Starbucks. And I'm wondering if that was also made available to you, or to you meaning Visit McMinnville.
So that particular training, I'm not certain if that particular training was made to us. We do have an opportunity to participate, or we did this past year, and I'm expecting that we do again in this upcoming year through Travel Oregon and the Willamette Valley Wineries Association. We have the ability to participate or host that type of training. And I think I would agree, I think it would be a great thing for us to go through as an organization, and be happy to take those notes and make that happen.
Thank you, Remy. A perspective that I have is I remember being at your board meeting earlier in the year, and we had very healthy dialogue as a board. And then the COVID coming along, and you guys switching gears very quickly to make sure the things that you foresaw and the resources that you might have and the appropriateness of what you were doing stayed within those frameworks of those early discussions of economic development, destination development, and destination marketing. And so again, just having watched this board work so well under Aaron's direction, it is a joy to know that you guys are so capable of being able to see what needs to be done, and to be a leader not only within our community but throughout the state of others are watching. Many have shared a little bit about the DEI, and as we are working on that as a council, we're going to be putting together our committee as it deals with equity, diversity, and inclusion, and that may give you some direction as to what the city is going to do. I also appreciate your partnership in being able to be around the stable table and to making sure that the economic recovery is something that's on top of your top of mind. So again, Jeff, thank you. Aaron, thank you. Kitri, thank you, and take it back to the rest of the board. We appreciate what you're doing. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the presentation. That'll take us to advice and information items this evening.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mayor, while this item is under presentations, it does include a resolution approving a contract with Visit McMinnville, Inc. for transient lodging taxes, resolution number 2020-44. Our recommendation is that the council adopt that resolution, and presuming you adopt that resolution, by subsequent motion, approve the business plan presented by Visit McMinnville tonight.
Okay, and that will be coming up a little later in our...
Actually, now is the time to do it. It's not printed later on the agenda.
Okay, so we have resolution 2020-44, a resolution that will be providing the contract and the annual business plan for Visit McMinnville.
I'd like to make a motion to approve both of those as presented, and thank Jeff for putting that 20% caveat in year 3 in there. I think that's great, and if that wasn't in there, I don't know if I'd feel the same way, but with what you presented and what you have in these current economic times, I can definitely get behind it. Thanks for being here to lead us through this.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 2020-44 passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to another 20 years.
Absolutely.
I mean,
advice and information. This is a time where we'll have reports from counselors on committee and board assignments. Again, I'm just going to go across the top. Zach, if you'd start us out.
Oh, the dreaded pole position. Okie dokie. Landscape Review Committee. I was unable to attend the previous one. The McMinnville Community Media, I have an update written down here. Their last board meeting, they do quarterly, happened to be smack dab on our budget meeting night. So producers continue to create local programs. They've increased gear available to remote users to help build out that capacity for people to use equipment. And something I've done before, and is really easy to use, and they get you trained up and certified pretty well. And they've bolstered that program. So that's for remote use, added laptop video editors, expanded ability to accept video files through Dropbox, so digitally submit those for MCM to create content. They partnered with MACHI to produce a virtual graduation video with 559 grads, no small feat. And they help televise the county leaders Zoom twice a week and our city council meetings. Hi, Jerry. Thank you to them for helping push that out. That's kind of all I've got to report on committee assignments.
Thank you, Zach. Let's move over to Kelly. You're muted.
I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with that tonight. Yeah, Jeff gave my report for Visit McMinnville, so I'm not going to worry about that. Landscape review was great. The only problem is we didn't have a quorum, so we were unable to vote on one particular plan. But people are building and doing all sorts of exciting things. So it was an exciting meeting. Too bad you missed it, Zach. You should come. Scott and I always enjoy it.
Thank you, Kelly. Let's go to Sal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council of Governments, we had the Council of Government Budget Committee meeting last week. As I mentioned in previous meetings, the COG has really stepped up and has hugely increased business lending to help keep small businesses afloat during the COVID-19 crisis. Very proud of that work. As I've mentioned in previous meetings, we're in the process of hiring a new executive director. I've had meetings with the search committee, the company that's hired to do the searching, working with the recruiter to find someone who can continue to provide some of the existing services that COG was performing for cities, including performance evaluation of management staff, planning, and GIS for some of the smaller jurisdictions. And I've also wanted to note that I've continued to receive a significant amount of email relating to a desire to reform policing in Oregon. I assume other members of council are continuing to receive a fairly large volume of email on that. And I just wanted to note for the record, I'll be sending out an email to everybody who reached out to me tomorrow to share a few thoughts on the matter. In the meantime, for the folks who are watching, the legislature is currently in a special session reviewing several different legal changes. One of the main changes that they're looking at is a reform to the police arbitration process that was really largely triggered by something that happened here in McMinnville 7 or 8 years ago. And former Police Chief Noble, now our current representative, has really played a leadership role in the legislature in moving that legislation forward. So folks who are interested in the issue, I would encourage you to send testimony into the Oregon legislature in support of those changes. OregonLegislature.gov is the URL. If anybody has trouble with that, they're welcome to email me or call me at my city council address. Thanks.
Thank you, Sal. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. MURAC does not meet until next Wednesday, but we will be revisiting at that time on Wednesday, the 4th. We'll be revisiting at that time the topics that I reviewed the last time in more detail, probably to make a decision and move forward. The MDA COVID recovery funds requests, we talked about last time, the MEDP request for the UR district boundary expansion and the COVID recovery facade improvement grant that we'd like to put together. And so that's next Wednesday. So I should have more to report after that meeting. And one of the things I guess I could report on during this time is as we move forward with the level 10, as everybody knows, we're moving forward with the interviews of all the counselors and the executive team. And then I'll report more on the follow-up after that. And when we might see, again, a new level 10 with that new system in place. So after we see the results of those interviews. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all to report.
Thank you, Wendy. Remy?
Sorry, it always takes a minute to bring it all back here. So the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force meets tomorrow at 10 a.m. and that is a Zoom meeting. And so there are ways to attend if you so choose. But in the interim, the main thing that I'd like to restate, I touched on this last time, but I want to just again address the moteling program that YCAP has been operating. And the main reason that I would like to touch upon that at this moment is because the moteling program is, and this is really to clarify language, the moteling program is a low barrier shelter. That language was misconstrued greatly in the last couple years. I think a lot of people understood that to mean some sort of tented area out in the open that maybe had concrete blocks around it. That was feedback that I got, so I'm not making that up out of nowhere. And in fact, what a low barrier shelter means is a shelter situation in which people that have greater barriers to entering, whether it's drug addiction or criminal records or a lack of rental history, or any other number of barriers are not able to access traditional shelter situations. And so the YCAP moteling program, and you've all received the updated statistics on that sheltering program in your email. Our city manager sent them out. But that moteling program through YCAP, which was a joint effort of the county, city of McMinnville, and city of Newburgh and YCAP, has housed, and I don't have the moteling stats in front of me, so please don't quote me on these numbers, but over 54 households at this point. That is households, not individuals. Over 54 households, mostly seniors, vets, and those who are fleeing from domestic violence. And what's really important about this program, and the reason I feel it's important to bring it up again, is because people that entered that moteling program also had a pathway out. So they weren't coming in and then solely reliant on YCAP to continue to provide them housing, but they came into this program and then were given housing opportunities outside of that, and largely have moved into permanent housing or other programming that will allow them to access that. And I bring that up now, especially because last year, House Bill 4001 was coming through the state, and it didn't make its way through because things didn't make their way through because, as we mostly know the state government didn't continue to operate as intended. However, there has been a special session called, and because people are especially vulnerable in this time with COVID, this special session is related especially to COVID. This bill has come back, and there's a tremendous interest for the city of McMinnville, especially for those who are frustrated with our, well, for everybody, for those who are compassionate and or frustrated with our homeless population. So if this House bill was to make it through, and it does have bipartisan support, it would give McMinnville the opportunity to put in a navigational center, which helps direct people to services and to housing, much in the same way that the moteling program has been acting. So please pay attention to what's happening at the state level in this legislative session, this brief legislative session, and watch for what has come back, what has come back with some minor changes, but is House Bill 4001. The changes are in section 17 through 25 and 9 through 17. And of course, we can provide more information. And then the other thing that I wanted to say quickly is that the mayor and I have both continued to be a part of the regional leadership town hall that happens every Tuesday and Friday, which is a Zoom meeting that's been convened by Mayor Beth Witowski of Dayton and Commissioner Casey Cuellar of Yamhill County, and invites state representatives and representatives from any number of different governing bodies, including Oregon Health Authority, the governor's office, different state representatives, and so it's a forum in which we can both send information up and receive information to send out. And then all of those meetings, if you can't attend Tuesday and Friday at 1 o'clock, which they are open for everybody to attend, they are also posted on YouTube afterwards. And it is really great regional information.
Thank you, Remy. Let's go to Adam.
Airport Commission, we haven't met. There wasn't anything on our last agenda. I'm not sure if we're going to be meeting in July yet. But as far as YCOM goes, we adopted the budget last meeting, which was last week. That's all we had on the agenda, was to adopt the budget. We didn't have any comments for our hearing on that. It was a simple 3% increase to maintain our reserves, and we did a couple salary adjustments to make them even with the market for the positions that they had. They were severely underpaid after a market study. So other than that, YCOM is stable, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Adam. Quickly, I'll go over just a couple of things. Transportation this last month was a part of MWAC and Newburgh-Dundee Bypass Committee, and we have closed out the books on phase 1, so money's come over to phase 2. On both of those committees, we're talking about the infrastructure bill that Congressman DeFazio is working on. As a matter of fact, we've had representatives from his office, and we've heard from him about the infrastructure bill, a multi-billion-dollar bill to help rebuild transportation in America. That is probably going to be over a 5-year process, and we definitely want to find ourselves in a position to maybe take advantage of some of that. We're a rural project that has high intensity, so those are things that we'll be looking at. McMinnville Water and Light continues to give out twice a week newsletter updates. We're through our Helping Hands program that the city and Water and Light are working, we have helped tremendous individuals. We've helped tremendously individuals that have needs of power and water. We've not disconnected anyone. Mac Water and Light has gone to a 4-day-a-week 10-hour day, giving much more flexibility to call earlier and later. About little by little, we're bringing some individuals back into the office, but we're primarily a third of our office staff are at home working remotely. The rest are out on the road. From League of Oregon Cities, most of the committees now have met, the policy committees, and I serve on the energy and environment and then on transportation. And so again, we're going to be sending out what those items are going to be, and cities are going to be able to have an opportunity to vote on that, so LOC knows what to put on the agenda as they're looking at the legislative coming up. And then as Remy mentioned, the Yamhill leadership group is meeting twice a week. We're meeting with the MAC leadership twice a month. So those are just some of the updates. Let's go to department heads. And again, I don't have the ability to look at everyone, but I'll see how many I can catch.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Before you go on, I actually had a question for Adam related to the YCOM committee. I have had heard a fair amount of complaints since we cut the police over to the encrypted format. And I had been under the impression that there would be maybe an opportunity for us to consider, giving, say, the newspaper or other bona fide media the ability to decrypt that for their use. And I was wondering if, Adam, if that is something that has come up in your committee, and if not, is it something that you would be willing to raise at a future meeting?
So it's, in my understanding, it's not actually in YCOM's purview. It's us as a council. The Motorola encryption is something that we as a council voted on months back. I want to say maybe about 6 months ago,
right,
when we on the contract, and that would be the only encryption is the McMinnville Police Department. There's no other YCOM users that the YCOM board would take action on. It would be our action as a council to say that we don't want encryption, and I don't even know if that's possible on our new updated Motorola software. That would be a question for the chief or maybe even Scott Berg.
Yeah, my recollection of that meeting was that we had discussed giving them the capacity to add the encryption, but I remember asking questions at the time, and I recall being under the impression, at least, that the media would still have some ability to listen into those calls. And I think, at least for me anyway, that would be something that I think that the council should consider. So if YCOM's not the appropriate purview, then I would ask staff to maybe bring it up through the level 10 process, or just flag it for future discussion.
And just to clarify, Sal, you're saying not to get away from encryption, but to give credentialed members of the press access to the wavelength?
Exactly.
Is Chief Scales on tonight, or anybody from the PD, Captain Jasko or Captain Simon?
Let's see if the chief is at the Civic. Here comes the chief.
I'm at everyone, it seems like, right? Hey, thank you. I appreciate the time. I can really quickly, if you want to talk encryption, is that what a question that you need answered right now?
Chief, it was just a question about the cutover that happened in, I guess, in the last week. And I had been under the impression when we approved the new equipment that there would be some ability for the media to continue to get that feed. And so my question is that something that is being, is that possible with the equipment that we have? And would your department have concerns about that, or what would be the obstacles to that?
Certainly, thanks. Yes, we've actually already been asked by the News Register if we would provide them with the encryption code. That's an email that came from Ozzy Bladine last week. It would be to their respective media outlet, not to, I guess you'd use like social media sites. That's something that I have not got back to him on. I did tell Ozzy that there were some concerns from our discussions with other law enforcement agencies that have done this. Specifically Eugene PD, they went encrypted. They provided a key code to the encryption, and within a matter of a couple of weeks to months, I would say that encryption key had been, for lack of a better term, leaked. And so the system was no longer encrypted. Everybody had that information. So I did share that concern with Ozzy. We do have the ability to provide that information. I just would say that if that's the council's direction to us or myself, that we maybe have a little bit more robust discussion about the reasonings behind the use of encryption, which I think I stated, and our PD has stated within both the media and our social media platforms, the reasons behind that. But certainly, I'd be open to having more discussions about that.
I appreciate that, Chief, and that's really what I'm asking for, is for a little bit more conversation about it. And in addition to the News Register, I would also at least want to include the Yamhill County Facebook site. I don't know if that's still active, but that can be part of a broader discussion. I didn't mean to take up so much of tonight's agenda to bring it up, but yeah. Thank you for your attention.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Could I say something? Councilor Peralta, although I appreciate your concern, I certainly understand in some respects what you're talking about. It's kind of a digression from the overall meeting.
Okay, let's go ahead and then, Chief, while you're there at the desk, go ahead and just continue your report.
You bet. And I was going to give you an update real quickly about the encryption, the radio system that was rolled out last Monday, Tuesday. It's been working spectacularly. Thank you for your support. And secondly, I worked on most recently, as we talk about transparency is important to our community, and it was ripe for a discussion. I've met with our Power DMS, who's our document management provider, and we are in the process of having our policy manual outward facing to the public. That'll be linked onto our website. I had actually an email with Scott Burke earlier today, and I plowed through a bunch of that today, so I was able to at least get them prepped and ready for release. Secondly, or thirdly, I guess, I did provide you with a packet. I think I emailed it out Monday about some of the community policing engagements and policy initiatives, priorities that we have been undertaking, not just for the most recent months or years. I mean, these go back some upwards of a decade, but I'd certainly like to, if you have any questions, I'd certainly like to talk about that if you have any questions. I won't belabor the point, but I did send that out, and I'd encourage you to see all the types of programs, initiatives that we have undertaken, much of which is leaning into problems, mental health engagements with our Health and Human Services. We partner with them regularly, our homeless liaison officers, our model school resource officer program, where we're doing education and prevention, your support of the park ranger program, taking officers out of the parks and using park rangers as ambassadors both downtown and our different portions of the city. And again, our work with UNIDOS, our work with NAMI, and which is a mental health consortium that we work with in the county, a threat assessment team. We co-sponsor crisis intervention training, de-escalation training, bias-based police reviews that we do annually, statistical transparency in our STOP program. Again, this has gone out on our webpage, and again, I'm sorry for taking up your time, but I did want to encourage you to take a look at that. Lastly, real quickly, I have engaged in a number of conversations with people within our community, some of which you know, Dr. Davis with Linfield and others within our community, about having some more robust, in-depth discussions with our communities of color. And he has, and I know Mr. Towery will speak more maybe on at a little bit, and I know Kylie will speak on the DEI training that she wants to bring in, but there is some discussions about moving some initiatives forward throughout our entire community, not just maybe police department folks, although that will probably be a large portion of it, but those discussions are already happening. Mr. Davis, Dr. Davis has said he's more than willing to help us with those discussions and bring people on board that would be of value. And lastly, I'd like to say that I've done a little bit of research and really taken a dive at maybe what we can do internally within the police department with respect to not necessarily an advisory board, maybe a council, a multicultural advisory council, we'll call it, where we can enlist a group of persons of color, groups of color. It could be a wide range. It doesn't, I mean, we're not exclusive to that. But the primary goal of the panel is twofold, is to listen to concerns and work on ways in which we can improve and solve issues or concerns that are coming up. It's kind of a two-way street. So those are some things that I'm diving into right now. And I look forward to hopefully briefing you up in the future. So with that being said, sorry I was long-winded, but got a lot of stuff going on right now at the PD.
Chief, again, thank you for your memo. I utilized that and summarized it like you just did with the county leadership, and so that was sent out and had people go to your webpage to be able to see that. So well documented things we're doing and what we're looking at doing in the future.
You bet. Now, can I touch on it real quick? I had this in my notes and I wanted to touch on. I know Councilor Peralta had talked on the short session, which started today, and there's 6 real legal police reforms that they're looking at right now. We're talking about arbitration reform, which Councilor Peralta spoke about, the ban of the chokehold, the Oregon Attorney General's Office investigation of use of force, excessive or deadly or serious physical injury, database for police discipline, a banning of tear gas, which we don't use, and then obviously duty to intervene on issues when misconduct is or excessive force is being used. I'd like to refer you also to my packet where I talked about the 8 Can't Wait campaign, the 8 policy initiatives. Again, please go back and look at that. We're MAC-PD, our policies are in line with already where other communities, where the state wants to take us. So again, I refer you to that document to just reiterate that we're in line with a lot of what the state wants to do already. And
thank you.
I'm done. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Follow-up for Chiefs. Thanks for the report and information. First off, when I left to come log on to Zoom tonight, my son asked me to say hi to the chief. So hi from Hiram.
Hi.
He also asked me to say hi to all of the parks. So I'm saying hi to all the parks. Thanks for that update. It was really great. I've heard this is kind of the second mention in passing of perhaps staff and at some executive level or some level talking about the creation of a, whatever we want to call it, council, committee, advisory committee, oversight committee, even that as big as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Council from our strategic plan. Heard a couple of mentions of that, and maybe we'll be getting another update on that soon. But I would like that discussion to come to council at a work session soon. That's been brought up a couple of times, and if we're going to do something or some multiple things that should come from the direction of how that should come from council, and I'd like to be in that council should be at this discussion, whether it's police gets its own, this one big thing talks about all these things, or what those look like. I think that direction should come from us. I appreciate you taking the initiative on lots of things, that included, and exploring and like, as you say, leading into that and how it could look to start your thought process in that conversation. I really appreciate that. But I think that direction should come from council, and that should be on our agenda for a work session soon.
You betcha. You bet. I would agree with you.
Okay. Thanks. And then
I think Kylie and Jeff will address that possibly tonight, Zach.
Thank you. And then also having a continued discussion on kind of where we're at now on the encryption, kind of following and seconding. I think we should have that discussion again, and whether it's part of that or not on the encryption, and if we're sharing it with members of the media or not, or love to hear your initial continued feedback in our discussion as a policy-making body on that subject.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. I think what I'd like to do next is call on Jennifer, because she's got a memo to read to us, and then we, I think, have a report and recommendation from Hagan Hamilton on our property liability, workman's comp, and auto insurance coverages. So Jennifer, I'll open it up to you.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So among the things that the public health crisis has surfaced for us is the fact that our reserve policy really does need a deep dive, a new look. And so I am proposing, after talking with our city manager, that we've got resources that we can draw on to take a look at where we're at, what we've been doing historically, and what we might do differently going forward. And that's working with the audit committee, also potentially with our municipal advisor, who helps us understand options in terms of debt and those kinds of things, because your reserve levels are important metrics for how your jurisdiction is perceived in the larger financial markets, which is important to us. So my thought is that this summer we pull together the audit committee and take a look at this and do some deeper fiscal analysis, and then bring back findings, proposals to the city council as a whole, and that also would be a really important base for setting the table for the mid-year review that we've already planned as a part of this budget process, given just the tremendous uncertainty that still exists in terms of what's happening economically, both for us as a jurisdiction, the city organization, as well as the community at large. So.
Remy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One note, or a couple notes that I wanted to add as we're talking about our reserves, and I know this is going to come up again in our budget hearing, so I was a little uncertain to talk about it now or later, but there's a couple things that I think are really important that we take into consideration. You know, we've had these very large reserves in the past. We also have not been keeping up on our buildings maintenance for a very long time, and we've had these hiring freezes. I know that the chief has stepped off now, but I think he would not disagree with what I believe is a fact, that we had a 20-year hiring freeze at the police department. And so, you know, when we're looking at our reserves and we're seeing them as being kind of terrifyingly low compared to where we are historically, I just want to remind the council of where we were historically as well, which was that we were not doing regular maintenance and upkeep on most of our facilities, and we were not hiring at a regular rate. And so while our reserves are down, and I agree that it's scary that our reserves are so far down, we've also been attempting to make up for a lot of that work that has been missing, or I shouldn't say missing, but a lot of that work that wasn't deemed high priority over the last 20 to 30, 20, 25 years. And I think it's very important to note as we look at our budget, in the work that we've done, that versus, or not versus, but just I think it's important to keep that in mind as we look at the state of our reserves and the state of our budget, is everything that we've endeavored to do over the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. Zach, did you have a question?
Yeah, when you said audit committee, are you talking about the budget committee? Sorry.
No, audit committee is a different entity.
Okay. Do we have dates for those meetings you outlined? We're going to meet in the summer. Do we have dates for those? This is when we're going to have that reassessment. This is where we're going to have the meeting. This is when the policies are going to come back to us.
No, I wanted to talk with you all and make sure I was going down the right path before setting things up. But yep, as soon as we hear from you guys, I will do what we need to do, get that going.
Okay, yeah, I think that, I'm thinking that's the right direction. I want to, and I think it sort of dovetails into what Remy had said, is have that discussion of how do we balance reserves with what we need to do to continue to maintain a city. So that is the discussion. I don't know what the rest of council is, but I would agree with the plan as outlined, and I would really like to work on getting published dates for those, so we know when these things are actually going to be moving forward.
Well, I think just by the nods of head that we truly want to move forward with that process of the audit committee, having our bonding agent and some of those things, some heavy lifting to come back to the council and have a work session. So I would say, Jennifer, you've got the nod of the head to move forward to more put that down in a concrete manner. Kelly, did you have a comment around it?
No, I entirely agree. I want to see the process start, and I think we need to be very realistic with ourselves about what we can achieve and still move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Super. Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, but thank you.
Great.
Okay, Jennifer, is this a time to get the report and recommendation from Gary Eastland on our insurance?
Yeah, I was just going to run through Gary's annual stewardship report, and that's in your packet. So for next year, we have the typical coverage with property liability, auto, mechanical, and a workers' comp policy. All of these continue with CIS, city, county insurance. And while there was a different process this year because of the COVID activities, or the obstacles it put towards being able to carry out activities. So they had a quick renewal process, and our just basic coverages were increased by 3%. So that ended up with a cost increase of 9%. So that's where the pricing is. We continue to have a secondary airport liability insurance package through a different insurance provider. And this year we added a cybersecurity policy. So that looking at the option between going out to the marketplace and what CIS is offering, was the private insurance market was able to give a policy that gave more coverage, $3 million coverage for a year, with more types of cyber intrusions included under the coverage at a fairly reasonable cost, just over $6,000. So we will be adding that to our insurance portfolio for the fiscal 2021 year. So any questions or thoughts or
yeah,
everyone loves insurance.
Thank you, Jennifer. We had an opportunity to have Gary come out to Map Water and Light, and we had the same type of report with the same type of increases. So it's in line with, I think, across the board. Okay.
All right.
Anything else that you would have for us, Jennifer?
No, that will do it. We, well, Muni Court continues with its heroic work conducting virtual court. They will be in the Civic Center space tomorrow, as always, and just breaking new ground, and couldn't be prouder or happier to be associated with that great group of women.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the report. Let's move to Susan.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. You did get a little bit of an update from Katie Noyd about what's reopened. She mentioned the parks have always been open and reopened. We've been getting the playgrounds opened and signed. The gymnastics via Zoom has started, so she covered that. Wanted to cover a few other things that we've reopened or are planning on very shortly. Picnic shelters are now open for drop-in. We are not doing reservations, but they were reopened in phase 2. Summer Stars Day Camp is opening Monday, June 29th. We onboarded the staff today, and we've got a great team rolling that out. We are operating that out of the senior center this year. You may recall we usually use a school site, but we are unable to do that this summer, and so our best facility to have an outdoor play space was the senior center. The pool, we have no dates to announce yet, but we are onboarding some staff tomorrow and working through some training protocols and going through some updated requirements for COVID. We have some specialty day camps that started this week. Skate parks are open. Skyhawk summer sports camps also start on June 29th. The pickleball and tennis courts are open. Sports fields are open. Adult co-ed softball will start in July. That was delayed about a month, but still going. The Discovery Meadows water feature was on everybody's mind today because it was super warm. We have asked the county health department to help us with reopening that and have sent them our signage and asked them to weigh in about some of the crowd control versus social distancing requirements that we need to meet out there. So hopefully we'll hear from them soon. We really appreciate their help on that. We didn't see this one coming, but the state required us to close sand pits. So we have signed the sand pit at Discovery Meadows that way. What we don't know enough about yet is the fall. This is still kind of looming out there, particularly related to school schedules. And several of you may know that the school district is trying to figure out how they will schedule their classes and their classrooms coming in the fall. And they're looking at a couple of different options that will impact kids on the block. So this is about the time of year that we normally start registration for that. We are not starting that yet. We are waiting and working closely with the school district on how and when we may be able to use school facilities, and have asked for a regional meeting with Child Care Resource and Referral of Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties to bring together all the regional providers for childcare so we can figure out how we can support them as families as a community. We don't know what that looks like yet. We don't know what the fees might be. It depends on how many hours we operate, but we're working closely with the school district and our partners on that. And hopefully we'll have some information sometime soon. I believe the school district is trying to make their decision about school days and how that's going to be scheduled sometime in early July. So we're still waiting on some of those things, but other than that, things are moving towards reopening everything.
Thank you, Susan. Let's move to Mike.
Nothing this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mike.
Sorry, Mayor, nothing this evening.
Okay. Let's move to Heather.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. You guys have a long meeting in front of you, so I think I'm just going to let you know that I sent you the Riverbend landfill notice for the public hearing tonight, so that you have that. It is a very limited public hearing in terms of what they're looking for in terms of comments, but if the city wants to draft something, I'd be happy to work with city council on that.
Could you do that, Heather, for us, much to what we had done in times past?
Okay, I will look that up and see how to make it relevant to what they're looking at right now. Okay. And then wanted to follow up on the Councilor Peralta's comments about Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments and the business assistance that they've been putting together. They've been doing a remarkable job in representing Yamhill County really well, and I wanted to let McMinnville businesses know that they are eligible for those funds. And all of us in the stable table will be getting out information about it as those funds start to get released. So we're looking forward to bringing that to the community.
Thank you, Heather. Kylie?
Hi there. I'll try to keep this brief as well. I know you guys do have a long evening ahead of you. So I've heard a few councilors request a work session regarding the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. So Jeff and Matt and I, Chief Scales and I have met to start talking about that. I'll work with our city recorder and with Jeff to get a work session on the books. We also are exploring some training options for the full city. Our executive team is reviewing those options right now. And we hope to bring some sort of training, whether it's virtual, in person, or a combination in the next few months. I don't want the council to get their hopes up that this will happen immediately. Every city and every business right now is trying to do this as well. There is a very strong sense of urgency to get this done. So we're going to try to get something on the books, and I'll keep the council informed about when that will be. And of course, councilors are invited to attend trainings like this as well. So we'll be sure to share some information with you. I just want to let you know, I'm not sure if Susan mentioned it, we are hiring back some of our Parks and Recreation employees who left at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis. So it is really nice to welcome our former employees back to the city. I got to see some of them today, mask on, to help do new hire paperwork. So we've got people coming back to work, and it feels really good. And then we have a new employee in City Hall. Our intern for the summer through MEDP is Jamae Stewart. You will see her out and about in the community. She's not on tonight, but we'll hope to bring her to a council meeting so she can say hello to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Kylie. Jenny?
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I have to admit that I was a little disappointed that Hiram didn't want to say hello to the librarians, but then I realized that he'd stopped by the library on last Thursday because the library is now open. We opened last week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 12 to 5, and things are going really smoothly. I'm really pleased. People are happy to be back. Staff and volunteers are happy to have people back in the library, and we're, making sure that we're comfortable with things going as they are, and then we'll be looking to continue to increase our hours. We're also continuing to do home delivery, which people are really pleased to hear that even though we're open, we're going to keep that going. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Jenny. Is Rich on? Is the chief on? Okay, let's move over. Claudia, do you have anything for us? Oh, there he is.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, the only thing I'll speak to is the upcoming week. We have a busy week at the fire department. Our ESCI consultants will be in for their stakeholder meetings. We have, I think there's like 18 different groups meeting, including the council session and then the joint policy group session. So that'll be our charge for the next week that we'll be working on and keeping folks in up to speed is what's happening with that process.
Thank you, Chief. Claudia, anything from your perspective?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Walt?
Mr. Mayor, just nothing to report. I do have a couple things I'd like to say. I have the sense that my tenure as designated pinch hitter is drawing to a close. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank the City Council for your confidence and your courtesies that you have shown to me during the last 7 months, and also to Jeff Towery and his extremely capable staff for their patience with my style and my habits as a small town country city attorney. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Walt. We know we're going to see you on many committees, but again, as our interim attorney, we appreciate all that you brought to the table. Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor. With that transition, I will tell you that we do not have an official announcement to make regarding the city attorney's position. We are in the process of working our way through due diligence and hope to have a public announcement soon on that. Let me talk specifically about a couple of the issues that Matt and Kylie raised with respect to the community conversation that's ongoing about Black Lives Matter, and about systemic racism and bias and what our role in that conversation ought to be. I am going to be working with some partners to bring together probably a series of proposals for the council to consider about the role that the city can play in making sure that its own systems, rules, and services are as equitable and accessible and as transparent as possible. And we, I think, will also have a role to play with regional partners as well, and we'll be exploring a number of those things. I think that most of the kinds of suggestions that we are hearing from around the community that you're hearing are entirely consistent with values in our strategic plan. A number of the kinds of initiatives that will be helpful during this community conversation are already identified in the strategic plan, such as diversity, equity, and inclusion training, such as a council to help advise the city on issues and initiatives. I'll be meeting specifically with President Davis at Linfield University later this week to talk about the possibility of a formal relationship with the university. I'll also be having a conversation with my professional association, the International City County Managers Association, which I think will step up substantially with resources to assist communities doing the kind of work that we're doing as well. And I will move on and allow the council to do its business tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that report, Jeff. Okay, this takes us to the consent agenda. We have 5 resolutions on the consent agenda. Is there any counselor that would request to have any item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. So moved.
And a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Kelly and seconded by Adam. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay? The consent agenda passes 6-0 this evening. That takes us to our resolutions, and our first resolution under consideration tonight is 2020-36, a resolution providing for certain increases to the fire department fee schedules that allow the fire department to recover costs for fire and EMS services allowed within city ordinance and the International Fire Code is adopted by the state of Oregon. So Chief, we'll have you back.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, the resolution does 2 things. One, it increases our EMS charges by 1.75%, which was the cost of living allowance that we went off of for this year's cost of living. That equates to about a $25,000 increase to our overall ambulance revenue projections for next year. In addition, it adds the fee schedule has been restructured to be more readable by talented administrative people that I obviously was not. My 2-column style chart was laughed at the department, so Jenny and Debbie took charge of that project and made it something more professional looking. But we did also add in some adjustments. We had fire code violation fees, we transitioned those to match to the civil code violations within the city's resolution and ordinances. So you'll see the reference to the level of the civil code violation rather than a specific fee. So we were trying to tie both together to clean up the city's different fee structures. We also added in some permits that we had not had before because the fire code has now authorized permitting. We have the authority to permit, but we had not had the authority to permit for food carts and some other marijuana processing, which are now authorized permitting processes, which also are hazards. So we wanted to try and get some eyes on food carts have a history of having some fires and explosions in some of the neighboring communities, which we want to make sure that we get out to them annually and ensure that they're safe for the community. So those are some of the changes. We also added in some after-hours fees for fire prevention inspections with contractors. I'll give you an older example, but it's probably pretty prevalent. When the museum was being built, a large part of the systems testing had to be done early morning or late night due to the light sensitivity to some of the sensors that were going on in the facility. And at that time, we did have the ability to charge for after-hours inspection fees.
Thank you, Chief.
I do have one typo I would like to bring to the council's attention. It's on page 4 of the document under the EMS fees. I want to make clear we have fire med subscription, one for in-city, and the second one says WN, and it should say outside of city, the zip code area. So it's a higher fee for non-McMinnville residents.
And that's the way that has been in times past, hasn't it?
There's no change to that. It was just a typo in the form that I missed.
Any questions of the chief? Go ahead. Go ahead, Zach, and then Adam.
Beat you to it, Adam. A couple questions, Chief. And, under operational permits, everything in there states its time period, annual, 3-day event, and then places of assembly or A2 occupancies, food and beverage, nightclub, etc. Is that annual as well, or what's the time period of the A2 occupancy permit?
Annual also.
Okay. Was there, I think I missed the discussion at a work session on bringing this back or not, but is there a discussion about, I guess, where do storage units fall into this?
Do you mean the storage units like
storage units?
Like storage units?
Yeah, like the used store places. I see that becoming a catastrophe and fire safety, fire safety concern in the future or now, frankly. And I just want to know how it's addressed in here, or if that should be something we should be talking about or thinking about to put in here or put in the future fee schedule.
So fortunately, I brought my subject matter expert with me, and I have Chief McDermott sitting right behind me. So I'm going to have her jump up to the table here for us, and she can answer that question.
Yes, I wasn't directing that question to her anyway.
So we kind of discussed it when we came forward with the Chapter 15. The issue with storage units specifically is they are rented by a person, which gives them a right to privacy. So we can't knock on a storage unit and say we need to inspect. So just similar apartments, we can inspect the common spaces and hallways and stairwells, but we cannot inspect individual apartments, nor can we inspect individual storage units, which is problematic, as we all know, because people are doing either administering businesses through there or possibly even sleeping in them. But unfortunately,
operating de facto manufacturing facilities out of them. So yeah, I appreciate the nuanced challenge it creates. I think the business owners ultimately who take the risk on to create a business like that should bear the brunt of that risk and its risk to its neighboring facilities. So any industry breakthrough and how to do that, I would love to hear, and how we can bring that to the city, because there are a lot of them. They're in various states of disrepair, and they're profitable endeavors that I think are becoming more and more dangerous.
Yeah, the possibility one would be is if they put it in their lease somehow, that there was a way that we could inspect them. But it also goes into the right to privacy and the right, we have some constitutional rights that prevent us from entering those types of spaces, just like someone's home.
Understood.
Okay.
I think that's the end of my questions. Thanks.
Yep.
Adam? Adam, did you have a question? Oh.
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to find it here, trying to find the page number. I mean, the gist of it was just more about the cost recovery of, with these fees and stuff. Is this going for full cost recovery? Is this 50% cost recovery? I know it's revenue we didn't have before, but what matrix did you come up to get to this fee structure?
Well, actually, a large portion of these permits were already in and passed by the council in this is an update. But they are full cost recovery of hours spent on the types of events as best as we can assimilate. If you take a look, some of the ones actually say full reimbursement. Those are full cost recoveries. The penalties are really based on the severity of the life safety hazard. There's not a cost of recovery associated with that portion, the fire code violations. And the rest of the time, for example, the permits are spent either on amount of time that each type of occupancy is going to take, or an estimated amount of time that the occupancies are going to take. If you look at the food carts, there's I believe I lost my place here. A $50 fee for the food cart versus a $250 fee hazmat storage facility. So the amount of time we have to spend either on research or preparation for the inspection or the inspection itself is really what it boils down to. As far as we tried to go for full cost recovery for the cost of the wages or the time spent for each process.
Okay. The state or federal required inspections for licensing, that's what you're referencing is the processor licensing fee?
We have a variety of facilities within the community, hospitals, schools, preschools that have a state mandated local jurisdiction inspection. Care homes are also included in that. So this is the inspections that when they call us and say the state's requiring us to get this is the charge for that inspection.
Okay, so it's for everybody, not just for cannabis?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments for the chief? Seeing none, then let's go ahead and ask for a motion to approve resolution 2020-36.
So moved.
And a second?
I do if I'm
Who was that? Was that Remy?
Sure.
So it has been moved and seconded, moved by Kelly, seconded by Remy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By saying nay. Resolution 2020-36 passes unanimously 6-0. That takes us to resolution 2020-40, a resolution making supplemental budget contingency transfers of appropriation authority for fiscal year 2019-2020 airport maintenance fund, resolution authorizing an inter-fund loan from wastewater capital fund to the general fund and the airport fund. And then we also have for consideration resolution 2020-41, a resolution making supplemental budget contingency transfers of appropriation of authority for fiscal 2019-2020 airport maintenance fund, resolution authorizing an fund a loan from the wastewater capital fund to the general fund and the airport fund. Jennifer, we'll call on you to present both of those resolutions to the council.
Yes, good evening again. So I think a clarification, what you were describing, I think may have been resolutions on the prior agenda.
Okay.
But what we have before us are two final budget adjustments for the current year that's closing June 30, fiscal year 19 and 20. And so one is with the airport maintenance fund. We are asking to move $80,000 out of contingency into the capital outlay category. It was a timing issue actually from the prior year. Something was going to be spent out in fiscal 18-19 that didn't happen in time and was actually spent in the current year 19-20. So this contingency transfer will cover that unbudgeted cost. And then the second resolution, 2020-41, is with the transient lodging tax fund. It also is a contingency transfer, and that's due to an accounting change. When the transient lodging tax program got started a few years back, the timing of collecting the revenues and then paying out Visit McMinnville apparently didn't happen within the 2-month close of the year. But for the last couple of years, it routinely, both of those things have happened. And so the change that's happening in the budget will allow us to close out the fourth quarter's collections and turn it in the same year without having to hold it from an accounting or a budgeting perspective to the new year. So those are the two FY 19-20 budget amendments that we're asking for, that you all consider passing in these resolutions.
Thank you for the clarification, Jennifer. Any discussion among the council on either of those resolutions, 2020-40, 2020-41? Hearing none, then we will take each individually. I will ask for a motion to approve resolution 2020-40.
Move.
And a second.
I second. For me.
It's been moved by Kelly, seconded by Wendy. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by saying nay? Resolution 2020-40 passes unanimously 6-0. I need a motion to approve resolution 2020-41. Do I have that?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Kelly, seconded by Wendy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Resolution 2020-41 passes unanimously 6-0. This takes us to resolution 2020-42, a resolution adopting the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020, making appropriations, imposing the property taxes, and categorizing the property taxes. So we'll call on Jennifer to go over the approving of the budget with us. Jennifer?
Okay, great. So the final resolution of the evening for the city's meeting is the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget. There have been a handful of changes that took place between the budget that was approved by the budget committee and the one that we have proposed here for you in the resolution. The staff report goes through all of the changes. Unfortunately, the detail on the changes didn't make your packet. but I'm happy to provide that in a follow-up, both for your information and for the record at the close of the meeting. But if you'd like, I can go through. There are eight categories of changes that came up, if you'd like, or if you all have had a chance to review the budget, the staff report, and don't need that level of detail, happy to forego.
I think it's in there, Jennifer.
Pardon me?
I think it's in there. There's 8 itemized things in here.
Yes, but there was an attachment that was a 4-page long comparison of what the approved budget was against the appropriated. So that's the piece that's missing. But it's nothing missing that would impact your ability to move forward with the resolution if you so choose.
How long, and I'm sorry if this sounds futile, but how long, and I'm asking because I'm wondering for those who are attending the meeting that perhaps haven't read the packet, for citizens attending that may not have gone through both packets. So to clarify for the public, how long do you think it would take you to go through those changes? Just as a means of communication.
Sure. I think 5 or 10 minutes. I can outline them orally if you'd like me to do that.
I think that would be good, considering the amount of response we've had regarding the budget.
Okay, super.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
All right. So the changes include every fund that had payroll, there is a small reduction in program cost because the actual health insurance rates are included in the budget appropriation numbers, and they were just a hair lower than what we had estimated health insurance to be. So because that's the first category. The second category is all funds that pay via transfers for support services have also a slightly reduced cost for the support programs and other kind of background care and feeding of their programs. So their transfers went down. But we're talking like, $10, $30, that kind of level. The third category was there is included a COVID-19 small business support program. The timing moved that investment to next fiscal year because it's just not happening as quickly as folks would have liked it to happen. So that's a change. The fourth change is there are primarily capital projects, 3 projects in the planning department for $40,000, the fire department for almost $138,000, and with the library for $50,000, projects that had been scheduled to be completed by June 30 will actually not be completed until next year. So that's a wash in terms of the economic impact on the city. It's just moving something that was budgeted last year to the current year. So that increases our budget for 2021. Then the fifth item was in the interim between the preparation of the budgets for the budget committee, the collective bargaining agreement with the McMinnville Police Department was ratified. That happened in early May. And so the fiscal impact of those changes, the specifics with wages and all that, just little bits and pieces, we added into the FY 2021 budget. So that was an increase, all told, of around $35,000, $40,000 higher than what our initial estimates had been. The sixth category is we found a straight up error. Thank you, Susan, in the Parks and Rec Department. We had identified or Susan Moore and her folks had identified a project that needed to be moved. They weren't going to complete it in the current fiscal year and needed to move it to FY21. And we had that information in time for the initial, or the budget presented to the budget committee. But while we took it off of last year's budget, we failed to include it in the FY 2021 budget. So that was an error on finance's part. I'm glad we got it in accurately for the 2021 budget. Then the seventh item was we had included a potential library grant of $40,000 in the, and that was in the approved budget. But we received word, Jenny received word just days before we were finalizing the numbers for the appropriated budget that the grant was not going to be awarded. So we backed that revenue out and the position that she had been planning to hire to do that work. And then the final item was that the transient lodging tax forecast, we updated that. And part of it was utilizing the data from Visit McMinnville and comparing it with our estimates and new information that had happened subsequent to the approved budget timing. And we chose to reduce the revenue and related expense in the transient lodging fund by $110,000. And so that means a small decrease also in the general fund for the 30% that goes from transient lodging tax to the general fund. So those were all of the changes. The net impact of all of these budget updates resulted in small additions to unappropriated ending fund balance across the city. Although the general fund, the increase in our net unappropriated fund balance was $656. So all that movement netted us less than $1,000 to the good. So those are the details. Any questions or clarifications I could make?
So let's open it up for discussion around the budget and the changes. Any questions, Jeff?
So happy to have some conversation around that. Let me touch on a couple of other issues that are more about how we move forward through the early part of the next fiscal year, less about adopting the budget specifically, but it's still related to budget impact. We know that we will be building a calendar for you relatively soon to schedule that mid-year review that we would target probably for mid-December is my guess. Once we see the property taxes and have a chance to analyze that, we'll build a calendar for that relatively soon. In addition to that, we'll be reviewing our expenses and revenues on at least a monthly basis. We have some revenues that are a little bit not on exactly a monthly term. So my question for you, and it's sort of rhetorical because I'd like to do it, we do that at the staff level. We haven't historically created a kind of a year-to-date, month-to-month report for the council to review, but given the circumstances of where we are and where we may end up being during the course of the year, I think there'd be some value in that. And so I'd like to work with Jennifer to come up with a kind of a year-to-date monthly look that we would provide to the council shortly after we close each month so that you can see how we're trending with our predictions. We certainly will provide updated information to you when we close the fiscal year. That really sets the stage for the year. That will be sometime in August. I don't know if we've got a targeted date for that yet, but we'll work through that as well and provide that. We've talked briefly at the council table, but a little bit in a little bit more context at the executive team level. We'll be implementing a vacancy review process for any positions that come vacant during the course of the year and are either supported in total or largely by the general fund. And once we refine that program, we'll report that information out to the council as well. We'll also be continuing work on the core services project that's identified in the strategic plan, and we'll be bringing that forward to the council for review, advice, and direction during the course of the summer. And with that, I will thank you for your time and look forward to any questions or discussion you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Remy?
Jeff, so many questions. Are we expecting any vacancies? Are there retirements coming up that we may not be aware of or anything else of that nature?
No specific vacancies that we have identified at this point. The reality is we do get vacancies during the course of a year. That's just, you know, when you employ 240 people, there are a certain number of people who move on every year, whether it's retirement or seeking another job or looking for a career change. So I can't tell you that this coming year will be any different than any year in the past, and we haven't identified specific vacancies that we anticipate at this point.
Okay, and then so this idea of doing kind of a monthly review, like a monthly, I mean, the way I heard it, so please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you kind of want to do a monthly P&L review with the council. Is that what you meant?
It's not really a profit and loss, but we track our expenses and revenues year to date from a budget perspective. We look at that at a department and a business unit level all the time. I'd like to work with Jennifer to come up with something that is meaningful to the council, that gives you sort of the macro view of where we're headed as an organization. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but I think there's some value in being able to share that information with the council to give you both some level of comfort that oversight is being exercised at the staff level, as well as knowing when something's moving that might ultimately require council direction and action.
So Jeff, that would be a variance to budget on a monthly basis?
Something like that, yes.
So here's my concern with that. At the onset, I like the idea of it because I think it's always very good to be in tune with exactly what's happening within your budget. But my concern is that it will welcome reaction in a way that we don't normally have. I mean, usually we're approving a budget for a one-year cycle. We're already looking at reducing that rate of frequency, and with good cause. I think it's appropriate that we're talking about reviewing our budget with more frequency right now. My concern is that when we start treating our government my concern is that this is a step towards treating a government like business, and government as the book. Whoever just said that, you are mic'd. So, I think that there was a book, Jeff, that you gave all of us when you started in your role as city manager, that talked about, differentiating government from small business. And so I think, we all have the ability to look into those finances at any point. And I wonder what it will invite. I'm not against it. I just wonder what it will invite if we're all reviewing our budget on a monthly basis. And I realize that questioning that in this forum, in a council meeting, is maybe not the ideal place to question it. But because this is the first time I've heard about it, this is where I'm questioning it.
Not a problem. So I'll just stop giving you the information if it gets uncomfortable for me personally. How's that?
Not ideal.
No. So yes, you adopt an annual budget, but we already connect with the council at least half a dozen times a year about budget changes. We always report to you what it looks like when we close the year. We always give you a report mid-year about where we are in terms of expenses and revenues. We usually do 2 to 3 supplemental budgets during the course of the year, so we're bringing things to you. Projects come up that have an impact on the budget and we need council authority to move those ahead. So I don't really see this, I see this as a more regimented way to share information with the council. It doesn't have to be an agenda item on the council meeting. We give you, cash and investment reports every council meeting. It doesn't invite a lot of discussion about the cash and investment reports. I think it's just a matter of providing you information and being more transparent as an organization. So we're not going to schedule 17 work sessions to talk about monthly expense reports with you, but we can certainly share more information with you in a way that keeps you informed. And I think I don't have any concerns about that approach.
I actually really appreciate this approach. I think of it in the level 10 perspective as a scorecard, so to speak, just kind of keep us apprised. I'm assuming it's not something we're going to have a tremendous amount of input on. Just it's good to know that you're looking at it and we can look at it too.
Well, and many of the boards that we sit on have a variance to budget year to date all the time, and it gives an opportunity for the lead to talk about why there's a variance, and it's very quick, and mainly it's timing differences, but it's a very common practice to have the variance to budget. But again, as Jeff says, maybe it's a report that's attached for those that want to delve into it. It doesn't need to be vocally presented each month.
I would definitely be in support of that additional information with what we're going through economically and what our current reserve levels are. I just think the opportunity to have a closer eye on it as a council is our duty to our constituents.
I agree with that. I think that more information isn't going to hurt anything, and I appreciate the willingness for staff to go through the effort to provide it to us. So thank you for that.
Do you see that information also going, obviously it would be in council packets, but going to the budget page on the website itself, so the community can follow along and feel like they're informed on the actual documents?
We haven't really sorted through all of that. There's no reason we can't make that information available. It's not uncommon for communities to have dashboards for performance and budget and any number of other things. We'll sort of work through that.
I guess my other question would be just from a capacity standpoint for you and Jennifer, Jeff, and her staff, is if this is an easily generated report out of a software program that she's not going to have to put a bunch of time into, or if it will bog down her department at all.
Yes, that is something that we need to work through. We need to be sensitive to that workload and not create, in an effort to be transparent and share information, we don't want to create so much work that we're losing track of our primary focus. So we'll be sensitive to that.
So I share everybody's support of this. I think it would be great for us to develop a habit of thinking about that along with you guys over the course of the year, so that we can see what's happening. And I also second Adam's support of you thinking about not creating an additional administrative ardor in educating us. So I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with that rolls into what you're already doing relatively easily, so that we can stay up to date.
Yeah, hopefully it's just an add-on to Logos that you just push a button and kind of come up with a report, but never that easy, I'm guessing.
I think while we're on the nugget of this report, I'd like, if it's going to us, I'd like it to also go to the budget committee, whether that's to bring them in on that discussion or just to maintain their connection and oversight of the budget. I'd like that to be included in that as well.
Sure, that's easy to do.
Good. Any other questions for Jennifer? Hearing none, then I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, make appropriations, and impose categorized property taxes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
I would like to just say one more thing before we approve the budget, if you don't mind. I feel like, we've received so much feedback on this budget, and I think it warrants us to sum it up right now by saying that, our chief of police has addressed 8 Can't Wait, and that we as a council are committed to forward progress, and that's not in word only, that we're taking action to that end, and that there's not been a lack of thought that has gone into approving the budget in its current form, and also recognizing that it's important to recognize that we're a full service city, and that we have to keep our lights on, and we have to keep our staff employed, and that a lot of the calls for defunding the police have had an additional call to do things that are not within our purview, that are not within our budget. And I think that's really important, that we recognize that, for instance, we don't have an alternate plan for investigating child sex abuse, which is a major issue for our police. And we don't currently have an alternative plan for addressing drug addiction. And drug crimes are a massive part of what uses our police force. And I'm not saying that that's the best use of the police force to follow up on drug crime. In fact, before the declared war on drugs, law enforcement in general came out and said, we don't want to be responsible for drug crimes and for homelessness. But where we are and where we need to go are two very different things. And removing securities from our community at this point, I don't feel is appropriate without other plans in place. And I feel like if we weren't addressing things like the 8 Can't Wait, for instance, that we would be at a different place right now. So because of the tremendous amount of community voice, I do want to address that and say that I know my other councilors and the mayor have taken a tremendous amount of time in reviewing our budget as a whole and evaluating that. And we are not blind to, we are not blind to systemic problems. And also this budget is being adopted with all of those things in mind, and with, I don't know the right words, maybe a great amount of heart, of concern, of intent to continue to review. I know it's not just within the council, but the entire executive team, it's within the entire city. And I just don't want to pass it without taking a moment to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Remy, for that summary. Wendy, did you have some comment?
Yeah, well, first of all, I support Remy, what Remy was saying. I mean, I think it is really important for us to acknowledge the thought that has gone into what we're doing here. It's not dismissive of the feedback we've gotten. Our approach is different. I just want a point of order. We always have discussion. We make the motion, then we have the discussion, right? So that was what, before we call for the vote, isn't that usually, so everybody will have a chance to say what, because I agree with you, Remy, we should let all of us discuss anything in relation to the feedback we've been getting and the choice we're making, so that it's part of the public record and that our citizens know that we are listening. And I guess I'll go next, considering that are we in discussion now, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we had discussion prior to that, so we can step out of that. I still have a motion on the table and a second.
Oh, okay.
All we're doing is passing a budget right now. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to discuss some of this other stuff. And although I agree with you, I'm not sure that it's really pertinent tonight.
When would you anticipate doing that?
So
I think there's been adequate discussion from the chief, from Jeff, and
well, you just said you're open to more discussion going forward and shutting down this discussion. I guess my question is, but now you're saying that there's been adequate. Can we maybe plan on scheduling a future meeting to talk about it? Because it seems like several members of the council have things that they want to get off.
There's going to be several different things that come up. The state's dealing with it. The county's dealing with it. I'm sure
it sounds like we don't want to deal with it, at least some of us. So I think maybe we should just bring it back in level 10 and talk about it in the future.
I think it would be wise, again, that we're dealing with the budget here. Let's have a work session, because there are many things that have been brought out by the chief, by Jeff. But I think we do need to schedule and make sure that we're within the parameters of our strategic plan, which I think addresses the concerns. We haven't brought it on board, and we need to bring it on board very quickly. But I think the chief did a very good job of summarizing what they've been doing and where they are and where they want to go. And that may be worthy of a work session very shortly, Jeff, for us to do.
Seems like a good idea to me.
Me too.
Just to wrap up my thoughts, that was the only thing I was saying was from the standpoint of acknowledging the citizens that have given us a lot of feedback. I think it's great that Remy stepped up and brought that into the discussion. We are in support of moving forward on making changes or making sure that our community is safe. We just don't think defunding, at this point, defunding the police is the way to go about it. And I'm in complete agreement on that. And so I actually agree with Kelly as well, that I think our method of moving forward urgently is different than what has been called for by some of the citizens. So I just feel like it's good to acknowledge that. So thank you, Remy, for bringing that up.
And thank you, Wendy and Remy. But we are in the middle of it has been moved by Wendy and seconded by Councilor Kelly Menke to adopt Resolution 2020-43, adopting the 2020-2021 budget in the total amount of $1,117,568,035 for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020, to make the appropriations in the amount of $82,482,694, and to impose and categorize the City of McMinnville's permanent property tax rate of $5.02 per thousand assessed value for general operations, and $3,791,459 for debt service. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, the resolution number 2020-43 does not pass unanimously with a vote. It passes with a vote of 5-1. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. That takes us through our agenda for this evening. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting and immediately open up the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency meeting, this date, June 23rd, 2020. Let's go ahead, Claudia, and do a roll call.
Councilor Drabkin,
Present.
Councilor Garvin,
Here.
Councilor Geary,
Here.
Councilor Stassens,
Here.
Councilor Peralta,
Here.
Council President Minke,
Here.
and Mayor Hill.
Here. Thank you, Claudia. Before the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency, we have a resolution number
Sorry.
2020-2, a resolution adopting the budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020, making appropriations and declaring the tax increment. We'll call on Jennifer to present.
Yes. So for the Urban Renewal District, there was a very, very small change made between the budget that was approved by the Budget Committee and what you have before you this evening. And it has to do with the hair of a change in the cost of health insurance. So the Urban Renewal District reimburses the city of McMinnville for the support services it receives, the care and feeding of the district. And so the total cost of that came down by $56. So the transfers out category was reduced by that $56, and the contingency amount for the Urban Renewal District was increased by the same number. So that is the only change. Are there any questions or clarifications I can make?
Open it up for questions for Jennifer. Okay. Hearing none, then I will ask for a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, make appropriations, and to declare the tax increment for the city for the McMinnville Urban Renewal Plan area. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Wendy and seconded by Remy that we adopt resolution 2020-2, adopting the 2020-2021 budget in the amount of $960,123 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, to make the appropriations in the amount of $931,652, and to certify to the county assessor a request for the McMinnville Urban Renewal Plan area for the maximum amount of the revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 9 of Oregon Constitution and the ORS Chapter 457. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Resolution 2020-20 passes unanimously 6-0. That takes care of the only business that we had with the Urban Renewal Agency this evening. And so I will go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you for, we did that in 3 hours. So a lot of good things we were able to accomplish today. So thank you all, and we'll talk with you later.
Thank you.
Make sure you have the full meeting.